Takers, it is Tyler. Welcome back to Ty's Take today. Joining us today is creative artist and designer Zachary Crawford. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Most definitely welcome. Hello.
Absolutely. I am liking this mirror. I need to get something. I feel like the wall is too empty. But I'm so excited to just, I don't want to waste any of your time or any of my time. I just want to get to how you got started and tell us a little bit about yourself and what first really piqued or sparked your interest in fashion and being a creative individual.
Most definitely. So I am a Detroit native, born and raised, creative. Honestly, what really sparked myself into fashion is just I didn't see a lot of myself or a lot of the things that I like to wear out in stores or online. So that just kind of sparked an endeavor for myself to create that void or just kind of fill in that void to see more of myself and also see more of the garments that I like to wear in the industry as well.
Absolutely. So speaking of your work and your vision, what does that process look like, start to finish, and what sets you apart from other people that are in the industry?
My process, I will honestly have to say, kind of, it just depends on the specifics of the project. But overall, I'm like a big researcher. I'm very big on like overloading of information. I feel like the start of a project always is better if you overindulge into research as far as like the customers or the ethos behind why you're building a garment, the functionality of the garment. So just like the whys to you're doing something. And I think that sets me apart as a creative because everything I do always stems from a sort of reasoning. So whether that's sustainability, functionality, it's a reasoning for why I'm designing a garment. And it isn't just throwing words like on a shirt or something like that, but it's just a little bit more of a depth reasoning behind why I construct garments. I think that's what sets me aside, and then that just overall process for just wanting to kind of and learn more, not just about the garments, but about the customers as well. So that whole process kind of makes it a little bit intricate, but that makes you kind of stand out, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And then I find it so interesting because, like you said, you're originally from Detroit, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. So, yep, Michigan here as well. So what has that been like? Because I know you're not currently in Michigan, right? So, like venturing out into like new states and just new territories, really. What has been some of the biggest challenges or obstacles that you have overcome thus far?
Honestly, I think me just being a only child, I really don't face too many obstacles with leaving because I'm always on a search and seek to learn more. So I've always kind of have been on a quest to do more. I really love home. I love our city just for the aspects of comfortability, have a little bit more space, but it does lack a little bit of the creative realms of, for what I'm doing. So from early in high school, I've always seeked to venture out. I moved to LA for a few years, moved back home because my parents got a little sick. I moved back to New York for a couple of years. I go back home. So I kind of like to relocate and just kind of see other cities and other infrastructures in this creative realm because we're trying to, even though I travel, we're still trying to create and maintain our creative network back at home. So it's always good to kind of travel and see other places that have existing ones and then kind of pull from it, bring, attribute kind of that whole relation. Um, Honestly, I would say probably the biggest like roadblocks always with moving is adjusting. Michigan, when you're there, we're always like, oh, I hate it here. It's so slow. It's this and that. But honestly, just compared to a lot of other major cities, yeah, it's a major adjustment, and that probably be the only like roadblock I would say is just the adjustment.
Absolutely, because myself, I'm from Michigan as well, and I'm not currently in Michigan, so it is completely different. And I think sometimes you kind of just, like Steve Harvey says, you got to kind of take that jump, make those moves, and then home is always going to be home, and like you appreciate the support and the love from everybody back at home. But I think sometimes it is necessary to go ahead and kind of venture out just to even see what else is out there. I want to talk a little bit more about what is your greatest accomplishments thus far, and then how did the whole collaboration and partnership with Foot Locker and Ethica come about, if you don't mind talking about that.
Okay, so I'll start with thus far. So this year I am the 2024 Virgil Abloh Fashion Scholarship Fund recipient, along with Macy's as well. So that came with the nice we received a nice check, but not only that, I've been allocated with a bunch of mentors that actually work in the industry. So this year landed me a 6-month internship with Taylor Brands. So they're the parent company with subsidiaries like Kenneth Cole, Taylor, Kanji, Joseph A. Bank, Joseph Abu, a few other brands. That was extended throughout the summer into the fall. So I've also been allocated with another design assistant position with another brand. So I can't speak on that one just yet, but those have been like really big testaments just to myself in this design industry, because those have been case studies and scholarship awards that I had to compete with other students in the United States and across the world that actually go to school for design or have received degrees in this field. And myself, I'm kind of a little bit more self-taught. So just a testament of winning that award and being around all of the other creatives and being in the space with the advisors from LVMH and all the other advisors. That's kind of been my thus far greatest accomplishment. My interaction with Foot Locker and Ethica was another collab that I did through Pencil. So there's this design school that we have back at home in Detroit, and it's kind of like an apprenticeship program. So a brand to come in, depending on what type of brand it is. It could be Jimmy Choo, it could be Coach, it could be Ethica, it could be any brand. They'll come in and then they'll select about 20 to 30 students to submit, whether that's just your portfolio or a case study, but it'll be tailored to the specific collection that that brand is trying to work on. And then from there, it's kind of like a competition amongst the students to receive not only whatever that brand is coming in to bring, but also to kind of roll off into that company, whether that's with the internship or with the position. So during my time with Pencil, Coach Tapestry flew me out to New York City to present accessories and footwear for them. And then I also joined the Ethica program where I constructed underwear garments. So that was a full production process from coming up with the concept, constructing the concept, briefing it to the team that works at Ethica, kind of taking them along the lines and the steps of where my design concept was going and where I wanted to kind of commercialize it. Because that's another thing with design. All creatives have full range of being creative, but if you're working for a company, you have to remember that that company has an ethos, and you have to make sure that you're matching that for that specific customer. So along that, I presented my design to Ethica at one, and they placed it in store at Foot Locker, and it sold out. So that was a super amazing accomplishment there as well. So yeah, just honestly the past 3 4 years and just me staying very strategic about my design roles or ventures. I've honestly just can say that these last 4 years have been my greatest thus far.
That's incredible. So congratulations on all of those things. That's a lot of different projects and, like you said, experiences. So, obviously I'm not too big on fashion, so I'm glad that I'm talking to somebody that knows the industry. But, all I can say is I know that it's always evolving. It's always changing. We see trends that we're back, we're popular and trending back like when my parents were younger, and then now they're kind of resurfacing. So with that evolution and how it's always constantly evolving, how do you personally stay on top of like what's forthcoming or like what's currently happening?
So there's a two-part answer to that. The first part is just trusting yourself. So I am a creative, I'm a designer by heart. So I just have to trust that my decisions and my design insight is what's going to be forecasted upcoming. And honestly, that's why I'm in this realm of industry, because what I have forecasted prior, the past like over 8 years, I always kind of see those trends start to fall into the actual fashion influence. So I think I'm just like blessed with that niche there. So you kind of have to just be confident with knowing what the upcoming trends are, because realistically, you never really can project what someone's going to want to do next year. You can kind of just steer them, and that's just the marketing aspect of fashion, and that's just another realm of the business as well, the marketing and where you want to gear customers to go for what you think is going on. So with that being said, when you work for a brand, that's kind of the creative director and the team in design's role is to forecast a trend or set a forecast. So every year Pantone, which is a color company, they kind of select a color of the year, and then you have other brands that select trends of the year. So it could be wide leg pants or Y2K. It could be all these different variances. But each the individual brand has their own forecast of trends for what they want to accomplish. So in between being a creative director and kind of trusting your own insight and what you believe is going to be coming up, you also still, like I said, have to do research. And with the business of everything, there's always some type of substantial research that can get you closer to what you're trying to answer. So if we know 10 years ago XYZ was a specific trend, then we know moving forward in 10 years, that trend also can relevantly come back. So it's just about connecting the research, connecting the customers, and then connecting the brand, which all goes into the ethos of whatever that company's brand is, whether they're tailored towards being classic, traditional, avant-garde, a little bit more high-end fashion. All of those things kind of weigh into forecasting the trends. And then that's just the job of the creative director. So like for me, that's the fun in this industry. And someone that may be on the outside may be like, oh, that's kind of like mind-boggling. But that's why, you know, they have specific creatives in specific roles in the fashion industry.
Absolutely. And so me and my boyfriend actually we were always watching like America's Next Top Model. Could you see yourself like on a fashion competition show? Like could you see yourself doing that, or are you trying to stay away from like the reality television or like competitions?
I honestly have been presented with a few opportunities. I just kind of wanted to indulge a little bit more into kind of finalizing myself in the industry before I kind of step into a little bit more of like reality or social media. Cause you know, I'm 29 years old. So when Instagram was first out, it was just an app on Instagram. And a lot of the other social realms didn't exist. So now that there's a momentous behind posting on social media, you can actually make money behind these type of things. And not even just social media, but just even with the reality realm too. It's helpful for expanding your brand. These are a little bit new for everyone, and just being in this industry for myself, I just kind of wanted to solidify my foundation as far as where I'm working, what I want to work, what field I want to go into. Because in design, there's so many different variances of realms that you can go into. So I just kind of wanted to solidify myself before I like put myself out there. So that way, if I do want to kind of alter a change or kind of like switch what I'm doing, I'm not kind of stuck out there in people's eye as this specific title. So you got some things covered. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. I want to know a little bit about your biggest inspirations, or if there's like anybody in the fashion industry that you could work with, who would you pick and why?
Honestly, I am really, really inspired by designers and artists that art in fashion. I like to pull a lot of my inspiration, honestly, to be very 100% with you, from nature. I feel like nature and architecture are kind of our biggest designers that we can pull true inspiration from. I feel like a lot of people pull from other people, and nature doesn't pull from anything, nor does architecture. So, like, just walking down the street and just seeing how, like, pebbles and stones lay atop each other, or how a tree can kind of grow its vines and its leaves abstract, or like the color variances of flowers. So just various different aspects of animals. So like cuttlefish, I pull a lot of inspiration from different animals. Cuttlefish can kind of like chameleon to their environment. So just like small aspects of that, I like to pull from my garments, because I think that that's also attributable for how we dress and how we kind of get dressed or pick our style and how we want to identify. So I kind of like pull a lot of my inspiration, truthfully, from natural elements, the things that are around me, as opposed to people. But if I did have the opportunity to work with a creator or a design team, and this is another thing, I think that the creative director that I would want to work with isn't even really working right now. I would want to work with John Galliano, which was the creative director for Dior. And he worked during like a prestigious time, like the 90s, early 2000s. And just his designs today are still so magnificent. So where those bags and original designs from 20, 30 years ago are kind of like three times worth of value now. And they're so simplistic. It's just like monograms or just cool little small attributes like clamps or small color pops on like a black leather belt and then a small little like orange pool tag. So it's like these small little intricacies that I like I said earlier, like I'm really kind of into the research and the why we're doing things. So if I could work with any director, it probably would be John Galliano, just to come up with a little bit more functionality for these cool designs. So that way in 20, 30 years, they're still in fluctuation. So yeah, that's probably what that would be.
Absolutely. So speaking it into existence, making it happen, putting it out there into the universe. So for me personally, I'm gonna tell you, I am really like when it comes to constructive criticism and like having those difficult conversations. I'm not gonna hold you. Sometimes I run the opposite direction. So especially with like the work that you do, what advice or like pointers would you give to somebody when it comes to like constructive criticism or of not avoiding those difficult conversations?
I think where we all have that like barrier where we don't want to hear kind of that we're doing something wrong or that we kind of have to edit or revise things. But I say a big takeaway from that, two things. One, you do have to kind of be discerned of the information that you are receiving from people. And if you are receiving constructive criticism, I would just say that the person that's giving it is in a little bit higher leverage than you. So that way it does make sense to why they would be constructively criticizing you on what you're doing. So not to say like when family may give you constructive criticism, that can kind of be taken with a grain of salt. But if you're in a kind of a conversation with a creative director or someone that's in an industry that you're trying to get into, that type of conversation creates a little bit more leverage for the purpose of why. So I would say just seeking anything in general, you kind of have to be a sponge and you kind of have to soak up as much knowledge as possible. So you should never really be too wary about hearing constructive criticism because that helps you edit and revise yourself to being that next level. Now, no one wants to hear like what they're doing is wrong or what they're doing may not be up to level. However, once you do hear it and you're able to correct it and change it, you'll never hear it again. So I think you would probably rather go through it, get those revisions done, and come out better on the other side as opposed to shying and hiding away from it because then you'll never kind of be aware that those things exist there. But I do also say to a lot of young creatives and artists that I kind of talk to or like help mentor out, you do have to be very, very discerned about the information and the knowledge that you're seeking, being a sponge. You don't want to just take anything from anybody and you don't want to kind of take a lot of no's. Someone that hasn't like ventured out and done things that people think are, kind of contemporary, they can't really tell you where you want to go with your dreams and aspirations because they've already put a limit on theirs. So I'm a big person to tell a lot of people never let no stop you. Kind of like use that as like a firecracker to keep going even more.
Absolutely. So I know you talked a little bit about, that there are some projects in the works that you can't speak on. Any other additional information where people can find you? I know we have your Instagram in the ticker scrolling down at the bottom. But lastly, what is your legacy and what legacy do you want to leave within this industry and any upcoming projects that you can talk about?
So right now I am working on a few different design projects here in New York City, but my current art studio back home in Detroit, we are working on our final renovations because I've been working on this art studio for about 8 years. The city of Detroit is my home and my heart, and I feel like we do have, and not even that we have to maintain, but the creative artists that are there or have ventured out, we have to find necessarily to go back home and make sure that we are supporting and keeping that community alive because we'll venture out and leave and then someone else will come in. So I am kind of currently working on re-infrastructuring my current art studio to where we can kind of do a little bit more networking, engagement, a little bit more involvement with the city and the other artists and creatives. So outside of my personal work here in New York, I am working on that back at home in Detroit. Also, alongside that, I would just like to say, for the most part, I think my legacy for just seeking my dreams and aspirations is because a lot of people put vents or put lids on where they think people can go. And just by being a person of color, a man of color from the city of Detroit, so facing so many barriers and obstacles growing up and just seeing how limited a lot of my other counterparts have been kind of constructed into a box or not able to just outlet what they want to do. I think that kind of is what drives me to leave a legacy that's just to be you, kind of just unapologetically be yourself and seek what you want. And I just think that there's a lot of industries where there aren't a lot of representation that looks like myself. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a man of color. That could be a man a part of the LGBT community. That could be a man that is also a person from an urban community that also still identifies with more of a suburban upbringing. So there's very multiple different variances of myself that I feel like I'm very relatable to a lot of people that don't find their self relatable to someone else, if that makes sense. So I have this job and duty to kind of showcase myself out to the world because there's a lot of people that need someone like myself. So that's kind of just where my legacy lasts. Be what you want to see.
Absolutely, dropping gems. And like, you know, so on the show we talk about we cover a lot of different things from like different creatives and like politics, mental health. So if you don't mind me asking, don't feel pressured at all. But a lot of our past interviews, I've been asking with how the political climate is currently. We're trying to use our platform to encourage people like to get out there, register to vote. What is your message? Because I know you had spoke briefly about representation. What is your message to those that are currently running for office, or to those that may be watching this and they're sitting at home like, I've never even went into the precinct to vote before? I'm telling you, we need to getting people registered to vote, get out there. Do you have any message in particular for either of those types of people?
I do. First and foremost, if you don't vote, then you can't complain. So we are the next generation. We are the new go-getters, the seekers. We are the individuals that our children will be reading in the history books. Like when we were in school and we were reading about all of these collegiate people and politicians in these books, we haven't really read about anyone new recently because we are those people. So I 100% am like behind anybody that's in my generation that is running for any type of political party or in the politics in general, as far as like, it doesn't have to be as far as like presidential, just anything as far as like our community and what we have going on. I am a very much advocate for voting. I vote every time. If I can't get home, I have absentee ballots ready to rock and roll. So I'm on that. But I just feel like a lot of our young generation doesn't find importance because they don't think that it's important until it's a problem, until we have no funding, until we have these loans that are outstanding, until we have higher taxes, till we have no funding for the parks, for the public transportation. It's never a problem until it's actually a problem. And that with our generation, we kind of got to stop. We have to be a little bit more involved. I'm not saying that you have to kind of drop your life and start researching every politician and every party, but in your community, there are a few standards: public transportation, taxes, students, the water. It's just like small, minute things that if you take 20 minutes to scroll on Instagram every day, you can take 20 minutes to kind of look up and just see what's going on in the city of Detroit or whatever city that you're in. They have these websites that are allocated for that exact thing. So I'm not going to say like, really like on it all the time, but I am very much a very stern advocate about getting my like younger cousins and the youth to vote and kind of know just a little bit more about what it is to vote and what are you voting for. Because in school, they're not teaching us that. They're not telling us kind of like what the factors are, what the proposals mean. No one's breaking that down. But at the end of the day, no one's also not in the high schools telling us how to post a picture on Instagram or how to edit it either. And we learn how to do those things. So we should be learning how to vote, get out there and just be a part of our community. And that just leads to the last sector of that part. If you aren't happy with what you see around in your community, take the steps to change.
Absolutely. Be the change. Thank you so much once again, Zachary Crawford, creative artist, designer. Be sure to keep us posted on the art venue back home in Detroit. We definitely will show some support and let people know about that once everything comes together. Thank you so much again for joining us today.
Most definitely. Thank you. I appreciate your time and I appreciate the platform and I hope everyone enjoyed.
Absolutely. Have a good one.